on the night of March 7, 2014, Kuala Lumpur International Airport moved with the quiet rhythm of routine. Fluorescent lights reflected off polished floors as departure announcements echoed through the terminals in several languages. Families embraced near the gates. Business travelers checked their phones one final time, and airport staff prepared for another ordinary overnight departure. Nothing about the atmosphere suggested that history was quietly approaching. Nothing hinted that within a few hours, one of the greatest mysteries of the modern age would begin. A Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 was scheduled to depart shortly after midnight for Beijing, and a route that had been flown countless times before without incident. Waiting on the tarmac was a Boeing 777-200ER, registration 9M-MRO, an aircraft considered among the safest and most reliable in commercial aviation. It had entered service in 2002 and had accumulated thousands of uneventful flight hours. Maintenance records showed no major concerns. Weather forecasts along the route were favorable. To everyone involved, this was simply another night flight. On board were 239 people, including 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Most were Chinese nationals returning home, while others came from countries scattered across Asia, Europe, North America, and Australia. Among them was a delegation of Chinese artists and calligraphers returning from an exhibition in Malaysia, carrying paintings and gifts intended for loved ones waiting in Beijing. There were engineers employed by an American semiconductor company, students, tourists, parents and children. Their lives had little in common except that by coincidence they had all chosen the same flight. Two passengers would later attract enormous attention. They were young Iranian men traveling on stolen European passports that had been reported missing months earlier in Thailand. News of this discovery spread rapidly after the disappearance, triggering fears of terrorism and international conspiracy. Yet investigators would eventually uncover a far more ordinary and tragic explanation. The two men appeared to be asylum seekers attempting to reach Europe under false identities in search of better opportunities. No evidence ever connected them to the disappearance itself. At the controls sat Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old and one of Malaysia Airlines' most experienced pilots with more than 18,000 hours in the air. Colleagues described him as skilled, generous, and deeply passionate about aviation. Beside him sat First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 27 years old and nearing completion of his transition training on the Boeing 777. Nothing in either man's professional history suggested instability or concern. At 12:41 a.m. local time on March 8th, MH370 lifted smoothly into the night sky. The aircraft climbed toward its cruising altitude and turned northeast over the South China Sea. For the next 40 minutes, everything proceeded exactly as expected. Radio communications were normal, weather conditions remained calm. There were no indications of technical problems. Then at approximately 1:19 a.m., as the aircraft approached the boundary between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace, the cockpit transmitted what would become one of the most haunting phrases in aviation history. "Good night, Malaysian 370. The message sounded routine, calm. Analysts who later examined the recording detected no signs of panic or distress. Less than 2 minutes later, the aircraft's transponder suddenly stopped transmitting. On civilian radar screens, MH370 simply disappeared. At first, nobody considered this an emergency. Air traffic handovers occasionally involved minor delays and communication gaps, so Malaysian controllers assumed the aircraft had entered Vietnamese airspace. Vietnamese controllers waited for contact that never came. Minutes passed in uncertainty. calls were repeated, frequencies remained silent. Only gradually did confusion turn into alarm. As dawn approached, search and rescue procedures were initiated. Families waiting in Beijing were informed that contact with the aircraft had been lost. The assumption at that time was simple and devastating. The aircraft had likely crashed somewhere in the South China Sea. Ships and aircraft were dispatched to search the expected area. They found nothing, no debris, no emergency signals, no oil slick, no evidence that a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people had ever been there. Then investigators made a discovery that transformed the entire case. Military radar data revealed that after disappearing from civilian systems, an unidentified aircraft had continued flying. The radar signature appeared consistent with an MH370. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, the aircraft had made a dramatic turn westward, crossing back over the Malay Peninsula before flying northwest up the Strait of Malacca. For nearly an hour after its disappearance, the aircraft had apparently remained airborne and visible to military radar. No interception occurred, no emergency response was launched. Eventually, the aircraft disappeared once again, this time beyond radar coverage. This revelation changed everything. MH370 had not simply vanished. Someone or something had altered its course. The questions multiplied immediately. Had the aircraft suffered a catastrophic emergency? Was there a hijacking? Had the pilots become disoriented? Or had somebody deliberately redirected the aircraft? Days later, another extraordinary discovery emerged. Even though all normal communication had stopped, a satellite system on the aircraft kept sending automatic signals to an Inmarsat satellite over the Indian Ocean. These signals contained almost no real information. They were simply electronic handshakes that showed the aircraft was still receiving power. But these simple signals would later become incredibly important. They suggested that MH370 had remained airborne for almost 7 additional hours. Engineers studied the timing and slight changes in frequency of these signals. Using this data, they created 2 huge possible flight paths across the globe. One path stretched north towards Central Asia, while the other curved south into the isolated waters of the Indian Ocean. The northern route appeared increasingly unlikely, as such a path would probably have crossed multiple regions covered by military radar systems. The southern route was different. There lay one of the most isolated environments on Earth, thousands of kilometers of empty ocean, powerful currents, violent storms, seafloor landscapes that remained poorly mapped. If MH370 had gone there, finding it would become one of the most difficult search operations in history. As investigators searched for explanations, attention turned toward every aspect of the aircraft and those on board. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah became a central figure in public discussion. During the investigation, authorities examined a sophisticated flight simulator found in his home. Within its deleted files, analysts identified 6 data points from a simulation conducted weeks before the disappearance. Some interpreted the route as showing a path extending south into the Indian Ocean before ending in fuel exhaustion. The resemblance was unsettling, yet the context proved far more complicated. The simulator reportedly contained records of more than 600 hobby flights involving numerous aircraft and routes around the world. To some investigators, the apparent similarity could have been nothing more than coincidence within a large collection of aviation simulations. Malaysian police publicly stated that no conclusive evidence of criminal intent had been found. Others remained unconvinced. Independent researchers and some officials considered the data significant enough to influence future search zones. The disagreement persists even today. No note was ever discovered, no clear motive emerged, no evidence of financial distress, severe mental instability, or ideological extremism was found. Friends and family have consistently rejected suggestions that the captain intentionally caused the disappearance. As years passed, multiple theories emerged. One possibility suggested a catastrophic fire or depressurization event that incapacitated everyone on board, leaving the aircraft to continue flying on autopilot until fuel exhaustion. Another possibility considered hijacking, though no organization ever claimed responsibility and no evidence directly supported such a scenario. A third possibility focused on deliberate actions from within the cockpit itself. Each theory explains certain aspects of the evidence while leaving other questions unanswered. The search effort that followed became the most expensive in aviation history. At first, the search focused on the wrong area before eventually moving to the southern Indian Ocean. Ships equipped with advanced sonar scanned huge parts of the ocean floor. Aircraft carried out countless missions over vast empty waters, while underwater vehicles explored depths that few humans had ever seen. Still, nothing was found. For the families of the passengers and crew, the absence of answers created a unique kind of grief. There were no confirmed final moments, no remains, no wreckage field, no certainty, only waiting. Then, in July 2015, more than 16 months after the disappearance, a breakthrough finally occurred. On Réunion Island, east of Madagascar, a piece of aircraft debris washed ashore. It was identified as a flaperon from MH370. For the first time, there was undeniable proof that the aircraft had indeed ended its journey in the Indian Ocean. Over the following years, more pieces of wreckage were discovered along the coasts of Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Mauritius. In total, more than 30 pieces of debris were eventually connected, some with greater certainty than others, to the missing aircraft, yet the main wreckage remained undiscovered. The flight recorders remained silent beneath the ocean. The answers remained hidden. The official underwater search ended in 2017 after more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean had been explored. In 2018, the private company Ocean Infinity carried out another search, scanning an additional large section of the seafloor. Again, nothing was found, and still the mystery refused to disappear. New scientific methods and improved drift analysis eventually brought renewed hope. Researchers studied the tiny growth patterns on barnacles attached to the recovered debris, believing these organisms could help reveal the aircraft's final path through the ocean. New search agreements followed. Ocean Infinity returned to the Indian Ocean during late 2025. Harsh weather interrupted operations before searches resumed in earnest. By January 2026, thousands of additional square kilometers had been surveyed. No wreckage was found. On the 12th anniversary of the disappearance, Malaysian officials confirmed that the latest efforts had again produced no definitive answers. Yet even then, the search did not end. Authorities approved plans extending into 2027, allowing additional exploration of remaining target areas. More than a decade after MH370 vanished, ships still prepare to return to the ocean. Investigators still study satellite data. Scientists still analyze debris. Families still wait. What makes the disappearance of flight MH370 so haunting is not simply the scale of the tragedy, but what it reveals about the limits of certainty in the modern world. In an age of satellites, global communications, and advanced surveillance systems, a 200-ton aircraft carrying 239 people vanished with no distress call and no confirmed explanation. Somewhere between a routine midnight departure and the endless waters of the southern Indian Ocean, something happened, something that altered the course of an ordinary flight forever. Perhaps the ocean will one day surrender its secrets. Perhaps the wreckage will eventually be located, its flight recorders recovered from the darkness below, or perhaps the final moments of flight MH370 will remain hidden beneath the waves, joining the long history of mysteries that continue to challenge human understanding. Until then, the last chapter of this story remains unwritten. A modern mystery suspended between evidence and speculation, between absence and certainty, between one final routine transmission. Good night, Malaysian 370, and the silence that followed that